Hello, my name is Erin Light, and I will be exploring the connection between spirituality in widows and anxiety. I chose anxiety as my health condition. Anxiety is an emotion, it's what we feel when we're anticipating an event with uncertain outcomes or when we're fearful. We feel worried, concerned, overall uneasy, and this can show up in us as restlessness, headaches. We could have trouble sleeping or trouble relaxing. We might have an inability to focus, as well as physical symptoms such as sweating, heart racing, pain in our head or stomach, or shortness of breath, among other things. And overall, people with anxiety disorders are easily startled or tense and on edge a lot. There's a few biological systems involved in anxiety. One is the sympathetic nervous system, which is our involuntary reaction to crises. Stress also activates the part of our brain that controls fear and aggression, and this is called the amygdala. This receives information directly from our senses, and it tells the sympathetic nervous system to make the body react before our brain even knows what's happening without our awareness. For example, this is what happens when we pull our hand back from a hot pan before we realize we're in pain. Over time, our reaction to repeated stress can become conditioned, like a habit, which causes our body to turn on and become anxious more quickly. There's also some hormones and brain chemicals involved, adrenaline and noradrenaline, now known as epinephrine and norepinephrine. These help to activate our stress responses, and the amygdala and sympathetic nervous system increase each other's activation, which means that nervous neurons in the amygdala get excited by brain chemicals, and then they'll pass along those exciting brain chemicals to other neurons. And together they all effectively create this trickle down effect of anxiety to other parts of the brain and eventually the body. This turns up our heart rate, focuses our senses, and makes our brains more alert to our surroundings. My psychosocial factor is a combination of spirituality and widowhood, which I will detail separately. A widow is a woman whose husband has passed away, and I would venture to say 99% of the time this is an extremely traumatic event. Not only is one losing their closest decades long companion, but the widow is suddenly alone and has many often unwanted responsibilities, such as caring for a home, children, and finances. Probably more prone to anxiety. Spirituality, I would say, can be defined as a participation in an organized religion in some way, whether it's attending church services, being affiliated with a religious group, following traditions or practices, or simply having a basic relationship with a higher power or deity. Most oftentimes, this relationship is based on faith, hope, trust in the deity, and compassion or love. So the question is, does spirituality in widows affect the onset and or progression of anxiety? Yes, I feel that spirituality in widows will affect the onset and the progression of anxiety. However, I think it's possible that there might be opposite effects. I think if a widow is deeply rooted in her spiritual faith, meaning her spirituality is intrinsic and part of her, it will have a greater positive effect on the anxiety and promote less worrying because she'll be able to cope by trusting in her higher power to guide her life. However, if a widow's spirituality is extrinsic or not built into her belief system as strongly, it might lead to a negative effect on her anxiety and promote more stress if she feels there is no hope and does not use her spirituality as a coping mechanism to buffer against stressors. So, with a focus on intrinsic spirituality, I believe that a strong spiritual connection to a deity will promote better coping for both the onset and progression into widowhood life stage. Specifically, how are spirituality and widowhood and anxiety linked? Research shows that spirituality is a protective defense against stress, and it promotes good health, and it also allows individuals to receive peace and contentment. In addition, religious meditation and contemplation can biologically lower blood pressure and relax the body, which essentially helps to turn off the sympathetic nervous system that was mentioned earlier in the PowerPoint presentation. Lastly, there's also psychosocial factors that can be attained through religious involvement. For example, attending church activities might lead to a stronger support group to provide emotional support and care for an elderly widow. All of these pathways are beneficial and counteract anxiety. Lastly, how can we relate a widow's spirituality and subsequent anxiety to one of the models of aging? This concept best aligns with the developmental processes model. Research suggests that women live longer than men on average. Having said that, it's easy to conclude that many women will outlive their partners, so many women will become widows in their old age. By that time, in a woman's later years of life, stress has already taken a great toll on her body, leaving a heavy allostatic load full of wear and tear. When a husband passes, his death is accompanied by extreme amounts of physical, mental, and emotional stress on the widow, which only causes more damage to the woman's allostatic load. Spirituality, then, helps to reduce this otherwise high level of anxiety by providing refuge, comfort, and coping mechanisms by trusting in an all knowing God who will provide safekeeping for the remainder of life on earth. Also, it provides the hope that this life is temporary and the next life brings more happiness. Without spirituality and the promise of a better future or security through God's protection, a widow would fully experience all the anxiety that comes along with becoming a widow.